start streaming and make sure that YouTube is going. But what a weird time. I think that Red Note or Little Red Book or Xiao Hongshu is very cool. I like it a lot. And it has a focus on lifestyle and seeing what's possible when you have better support, which China just has better support than we do for normal everyday life stuff. And we have been kept in the dark, especially the 10 years of like explosive improvement that they've experienced. I also want to add something like even with the doing as building, doing as arriving language, I would encourage going towards the word improvement rather than progress because one is clearly reinforcing doing as arriving. I want time to work on my books, so I'm going to be spending time on books during this Housekeep-a-thon, by the way. But I really need to spend the next week getting into that. This is so bizarre. I really, yeah, like I'm not sure what we're gonna do next. This is such a strange thing to realize that I cannot I cannot rely on people who already have authority or power to do anything that makes sense for us. They're not going to do things that make sense for us. And even if they do, they won't understand why it makes sense and they'll only do it for attention. So they'll only do something helpful to neurodivergent people if there can be an article written about them where they're smiling, saying something that's pithy and very trite, some truism that doesn't really help us. And that's all it's for, is to take credit for being a special person who gives a shit about the defects or whatever they see us as at this point. I mean, or the magical people, whatever it is. We have to have some characteristic that is relative to them. Like it's all hierarchically arranged as sick as that is, dude. Like I'm so tired of that. I don't want to be a token. I don't want our gains to be attributed to tokenism because somebody who's already in power wants to be legitimized. We really are facing that. This is so weird. I'm not being hyperbolic. There's not a good way to organize our resources. I know they exist, but it's kind of like word of mouth. And I was in a call with autistic people today, from one of the groups that was for like women and femme people and just like doing kind of a friendship, speed dating sort of thing, like speed friending. And we were just talking about random things that we had special interest in. And one of the things that came up was like, we're in the dark ages of understanding this and understanding psychology and mental health and neurodevelopmental differences. We're in the dark ages. It's weird because we're doing it in a technologically connected era. So I think it can feel like we're creating all of these resources, but they don't look like the resources were made for us. They look like they were presented to neurotypical people for approval. And I hate it. Like, so I don't want all of our resources to be on Meta. That's crazy. I don't want all of our resources to be on TikTok, even though it inadvertently started a chain reaction for people. Also, hey Cheddar. So we'll be talking about reform to the ADA specifically today. Our stream has started. And we'll be preparing for some streaming on TikTok to see how that goes. I was impressed with how well their algorithm connected me to other people who really cared about this. I will say I noticed a few things from the algorithm. I was connected to a lot of white women, which was a little strange. Like I don't come from a place where there's a huge cluster of white people, so to suddenly have a very large white audience, it seemed to be age was a little less, not very many super young people, but that makes sense. I think it's the things I say are a little bit dense for somebody that's very young. But 30s, 40s, and even older, but mostly white women. Like, why am I getting sequestered over to white ladies? Like, no offense, I don't mean it that way, but it was weird. Autism does not discriminate against you that way. It's not this class of people have autism, this class doesn't. That's not what's happening. I think awareness seems to be spreading to white people first, which is really weird and maybe a conversation that needs to be unpicked a little bit. I also don't like that the algorithm has decided to sort us that way, even if we did not grow up under those conditions. Like, I did not grow up under the extremes of segregation that is normal in America. So it actually really bothers me that this algorithm is like, I'm going to make you feel like you live in the Midwest. I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. Interest. Yeah, yeah. There's. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You're can, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. I caught most of what you were saying, but also I was making sure it wasn't just me. Your mic is coming in and out a bit. It seems like it's like, when it like pulls out and you can it's not roboting, but it pulls out a couple of words here and there. Okay. 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 And if thank you for trying that. If that doesn't work, I can also check because when I first signed in, mine was a little bit funky. Okay. Oh, I got it. I know what's going on. Oh,
Ah,
okay. Okay. And I had yours. Okay, I got it now. Okay, so okay, and then their mic seemed off. Okay, it was off totally on that one. Okay. Can you talk a little bit? I think I fixed my end.
cool. I joined on my laptop too, which is
Okay.
also nice because I can use emojis and stuff.
Sick. Okay. I love it. So yeah, so you were saying like can you get a little bit back into that thing where like the way of speaking that's triggering? Because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, so there's a lot of emotional context shared,
Mhm.
which sometimes it gets trauma dumping. Like I'll give you an example. So there's this group that I checked out recently, which overall great experiences. And like my experiences there varied day to day, which like that's common for me, same with here. But it was really interesting this one specific day, when I left partway through because just picking up that much emotion from that many people
Mhm.
was just a lot. The topic was autism and the menstrual cycle, which I thought it was amazing to have a space for that.
Yeah.
And then in these groups, a lot of time the intros take up like a third of the time. And Maud had put out like quite a few intro questions this time, which I know sometimes that gets people in headspace too. But like so the questions were like your name, where you are in the world, when you were identified, how you feel about your menstrual cycle, not how you feel about autism. And then like a good experience you had recently to kind of balance out the emotions. And almost all of these women shared about how they were feeling about learning they're autistic overall. And then about their menstrual cycle. And that was just a lot. And then when it got to the part about like, and you know, there were some nuggets that I found helpful and were like, oh, it's less bad when I do blah blah blah. Versus there's this other group I go to run by a dude who's like culturally influenced by New Jersey. And
I know New Jersey.
And there, hey Lilith, there may be like we're talking about how people engage in autistic spaces depending on like demographics, and specifically like 30 to 40 something white women of speaking, and how I find that triggering, and how something about what I'm doing brings that out in people.
How you find what triggering?
The way that, okay, if you bring a group of neurodivergent 30 and 40 something white women, you know, stereotypical white women, to stereotypically acting, you know, no one's actually stereotypical, like stereotypically socialized white women, to a space to talk about their neurodivergent experience.
Okay,
I find what
continue.
happens most of the time draining and triggering. And so I gave one example of that. Basically, like, so there was a space, there were some intro questions. This particular call was about autism and the menstrual cycle, which I was really glad there was a call about that. And so there was a quick, like, okay, when were you identified as autistic? And then, like, how do you feel about your menstrual cycle on topic? But almost all of these women shared, you know, all their heavy thoughts about how they feel about they're autistic. Yeah. And then about how they feel about their menstrual cycle and how bad it's been their whole life. And that was just a lot emotionally to pick up. When what I actually found helpful was there were a couple mentions of things that found made their menstrual cycles easier. I'm like, okay, I wish instead of going to that call, I had, you know, searched like X before it was a shit show, or maybe TikTok, or, you know, somewhere where it's more like this group where we're talking about the issue without sharing about all of the emotions. You know, oh, how do you feel about the 88? How do you feel about the 88? How have you felt about it since you were a child? And then okay, here's this epiphany.
Okay,
and,
okay,
as
yeah,
a comparison, go to this other group, real quick, like one sentence. Go to this other group run by a dude who's socialized kind of New Jersey, and things are way more topical, and that works way better for me. All right, okay. So here's the epiphany.
Okay, it's because they've been therapized since they were children. So the white women were put in therapy over and over and over and over again. That's what happens to white women. And that doesn't happen in other classes in America because, number one, financially. Number two, this is something that's a known thing in psychology. They weren't trained to work with other cultures besides the standard white American waspy person. So you had to like train, and we just barely have any training or whole cultural competence stuff coming out now, right? And so they sound like that because this is their interpretation of their years of being inappropriately into therapist's office, and being, it's like they've been medicated, they've had antidepressants since their early 20s, all kinds of shit.
And something that I've
Mm.
realized and noticed in the past week, because I have coming up an appointment with a neurodevelopmental psychologist for the first time, and I'm writing out my history with therapy and stuff, is that we just talk about therapy as if it's this one thing, as if there's not like the different subsections of the science of
Yeah.
different ways it gets done, but also
Modalities.
subcultures
Mm-hmm.
sort of within the therapy as well. Which I only realized this was like a thing that was happening just this week, right? But so I haven't thought too much about it. But like the way we talk about therapy in general, and then more specifically in the like sort of online left-ish space where people are like, therapy is good, you should get therapy, right? Like if you have problems, therapy will help, is a very well, is sort of like this group of white ladies that you're talking about kind of therapy place where it doesn't distinguish at all between the types of therapy and doesn't acknowledge the realities of the difficulty with getting results from therapy,
Mm-hmm.
which are
Yeah.
real and difficult. Like I just read an autobiography by Paige Lale called "But Everyone Feels This Way." She's autistic, and she goes through the trouble she had going to therapists before and even after getting her autism diagnosis.
Yeah, and this is so weird because I got sent to a therapist when I was 18 the first time because I was dancing and I went to a sports nutritionist and I followed his plan exactly. I've talked about the story, but it's just so bizarre. And then I got really skinny. And then he said that I went to an appointment with my dad as a check-in because I was, trying to follow this plan. And he said that I must be lying and throwing away my lunch. And he tried to get me therapy for an eating disorder. He accused me of having an eating disorder. And then I burst into tears and started having a meltdown because this man was saying that I had an eating disorder and was lying and was starving myself in front of my dad. It was crazy. But that's how I ended up with my first therapist. And she said, no, you don't have an eating disorder, but you're extremely stressed out, basically. So that's how I ended up in therapy. They put white girls into the therapy system for eating disorders who have autism.
Right. And so when I got to actually see a therapist for the first time at like 15 or so, I was like horribly suicidally depressed, but I was diagnosed with just dysthymia and not suggested to have any follow-up therapy sessions, but just given drugs and started putting on, some kind of anti-anxiety or antidepressant and started cycling me through those, the hope something would work without any sort of follow-up into why is this, at the time, like young man feeling this way, or is there anything is this resulting from real issues? No, it's just a chemical imbalance, and all we need to do is pour antidepressants on it until it works, right?
Yeah.
Which is incredibly not helpful. And then in the same way, like I wonder if I was if I was a girl, would they have maybe put me into therapy? And if I wasn't white, would I have gotten either?
Right.
As well,
and if you were white, you could, and depending on your parents. So my mom had this degree in psychology, so this wouldn't have happened to me, but it happened to a lot of girls. You could have been involuntarily committed to one of these fucking inpatient mills for people with eating disorders or whatever disorders or conduct disorders. But a lot of it, they would, if you were a cutter or whatever, like they put all that's what they did to my generation of girls. They did that for like 20 years. Of like just throw, right. And I think it was mostly the white girls because it was like seen as like a status thing or something, that this is what you do with your defective daughter, and that like has not been unpacked. And I think being around those women may be very difficult because they are deeply scarred in ways that are very specific that they don't realize because they're still in segregated neighborhoods and cities. that like that's actually really weird that this is how you've come out to talk about your life with all this like therapy speak and stuff. And I think that this has happened for adopted people as well. So when I do see people of color, or like however you want to phrase it at this point, but anybody who's non-white, a lot of times they have white parents and they were still put through that system.
Of course, that's without even getting into like the huge issues that you could get into with the institutionalization system at large and everything, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so Nai's here. Yeah, this is I don't know if any of y'all saw my message, but anyway, I met Nai in a neurodivergent writing Discord, and like we've talked a lot about like paradigms and like perceptions of neurodiversity. So today's topic is about reforming the ADA, and we ended up talking about TikTok and then about like the way that different demographics of neurodivergent or autistic people interact in conversations about neurodiversity. We started talking about how a lot of it is dominated, or at least like both Jane and I have ended up in pipelines where there are a lot of 30 and 40 something white women, and there's a lot of therapized sounding conversation, but like it's sometimes not actually a healthy way to talk, and I find that really triggering. And then Jane and Lilith were talking about some of the early childhood stuff that might lead to that.
That's interesting. I do get the sense from, like, for example, like LGBT groups I've been in, like the therapized talk, like that you like I think people try to say the right thing, like by leaning on maybe stuff they heard from their therapist, or like like trying to like be very, very correct, which isn't bad. It's just it just comes out kind of not so genuine.
Yeah, and it's not situated. So I like to harp on this, that if you have knowledge, you should situate why you have it. Like, where did it come from in your own words, like your own story of encountering it, not like necessarily a Wikipedia, though you can do that too. And they don't situate, well, why do you use that framing? Because if you actually were an expert in the field, all of these fields have controversies and arguments between different modalities, right? So the framing isn't crystallized in the field like that. It's more like a ton of different lenses that are, and we clearly are not participating at the level of that debate. Like, that's not where we're invited. We are also people that were given the wrong tools. So we don't have insight into them. We were just told this is how it works, and we don't ask deeper questions about, well, who was that developed for? And it wasn't developed for us. So then for us to then say, well, this must be the right language for us to use. I'm like, well, who says it's legitimate at all in this context, even if you can argue for it, which we're not, because none of it's situated.
Right, which I guess I would sort of compare and contrast the point you're making there to the fact, like, I would bring up, if it's context appropriate, the ideas that I learned while doing CBT, right, cognitive behavioral therapy, but I wouldn't do it in a way that I would expect anyone to be like, you are therapizing this space, right? Because I'm just bringing up the ideas behind those tools, and I would do it in a context appropriate way, where it's like, oh, I think this might help a person, and I point that out, right? And if they don't know about the tools, I could explain them. But I wouldn't be like picking up the language or like subculture attached to talking or about that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or like kind of be their temporary therapist.
Yes. Budget therapy from all of us who don't have, another option, I guess. But this whole framing needs to be challenged, because it definitely circulate it what's the word it circulates ideas that I think are coming out of these conversations like a game of telephone.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And a point that Lilith made that really ties to a conversation that Nye and I had in this other Discord was about people saying like therapy good, but
Yeah.
not about like the different types or the kind of challenges people might have. And just kind of throwing
Mhm.
this, I've had therapy and it changed my life. And like,
Oh,
okay, yeah, but like now you're insufferable to me and not able to like compromise, you know,
Right.
and talk about how can we
Mhm.
meet two different people's needs. Like basically, yeah, a lot of them are like pretty privileged
Right.
and have
Right.
been able to
And just
find
like
ways to meet their, yeah. And then
without being like a Scientologist and being anti-therapy, it is sort of like a person being like spirituality good or religion good because they happen to have a really good experience there. Does that make sense, Tara?
yeah.
Right.
Yes. And you know, then they kind of use their being a little bit older than me as like, I've been there, like kind of this mama bear energy, but
Mm.
like they cannot handle not being like they seek out neurodivergent people, but they
Mhm.
can't handle not being the only neurodivergent person in the room.
huh.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a whole sort
Interesting.
of separate personal psychology type issue, psychiatric type issue, right? Where they have unresolved things, funnily enough, that could be helped through the right kind of therapy.
yeah, and like they might not know that there even are all these different kinds, or like, oh, like
Right,
they've had 5 years of therapy and I haven't had that much, so I can't call them out on
right.
anything.
And so they don't even have what, like, I think I would consider the basic framework to be talking about their therapy, which would be the understanding that there's different kinds and what kind they have been doing, and being able to talk about what have they learned not about themselves and healed about themselves, but learned about therapy itself and how to do it. Because not everyone is the kind of person like Jane or I who is actively trying to learn about how therapy works while we take it and learn about it and apply it to ourselves. Does
Mhm.
that make sense, Jane?
Yeah, well, and I think it's this is so difficult. It takes some experience, and I don't know which combination of experiences would do this, but I think it takes some
Mhm.
experiences where you're like, okay, this professional person is in a field of professionals who all disagree with each other. And
Mm.
so it's not just like I have to meet the therapist with like their personality, like what they believe the purpose of therapy is and what they were taught is going to shape
Mhm.
this experience more
Mhm.
than their personality. Like they have a set of
Mm.
what's the word I'm looking for? Professional beliefs, right? And my
Mhm.
Mhm.
my experience with therapy ultimately is that those professional beliefs did not serve me, even though the ground floor I
Mhm.
think of therapy is you go in, you talk to somebody, they don't freak out over what you have to say, and then you have the
Mhm.
experience of like, I guess my thoughts aren't an emergency. That's it. Like that's like what I got for the most. I mean, with that's all I can remember that I got. Like maybe it helped me to regulate in the moment, but it just was like,
Oh
oh,
wow.
I guess this isn't an emergency. But then if you think about that with the the context of a bunch of white women who are probably never going to be selected for traditional marriage and are getting more likely to be abused by men, and they're supposed to be part of this weird system that's even really convoluted. They're still not really getting a strong message. They're mostly like, stay out of our way. Like it's not a problem that you're messed up. Stay out of our way. Find a man. One of my therapists would just ask me about relationship with men. I'm like, I'm having problems with like motivation and career. Why do you keep asking me about this? He was a
It's
he
funny.
was
Mhm.
a
I
man.
actually have a similar situation.
Mm.
I don't think it's conscious. I think this therapist is just trying to touch bases on all aspects of my life. I mostly have like career questions, and then my therapist always circles back to, how are you and my boyfriend?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So is therapy in the West modeled on fix the white women that are unmarriable?
Oh, huh.
That's
Wow.
Right.
I never
Kind
thought
of
about
feels
it
like
that way.
that.
Question, it's like my brain just throws up a giant check mark, like ding 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 ding. Someone asked the correct question, right? Because like this, like I don't know much about what's his name, Freud, but no, absolutely, this is what therapy came from and is about, right? Because it developed in the time around or after, I don't know, of hysteria and like manually giving the
Yeah.
women who come into your clinic orgasms.
Yeah.
Right, which this is how the dildo was invented.
Uh-huh.
Doctors designed it and used it to manually give women orgasms to cure hysteria,
That was
to make
disgusting.
Well,
them
vibrator action
not
more
be
specifically.
the vibrator, or
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
be like, or be okay with their marriages, basically, to sort of like calm down and not feel so unfulfilled.
Wait
and
to have
shitty about
a
the marriage.
mature. They thought that the vaginal orgasm was the mature orgasm psychologically, and the other one was an arrested development. Having a clitoral orgasm was arrested development psychologically. Yes, this was at the
Oh,
time of Freud.
right.
Wow.
Right, and this is the environment in which Freud invented all his theories, and thus, the whole way, the whole context of psychology developed, right? Because we can say that we moved away from all of his specific theories that he came up with, which is not completely true anyway. But even if it were, it was still the beginning context, which has sort of just like moved unacknowledged along with the field over time. Does that all make sense, Jane?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And we haven't had a chance to question it, and I think this is a weird juncture, but we're going to have to tell white women that what you learned was useless bullshit, and you are now driving people away because it's creepy. It's creepy. They were, you know what I mean? Like, you memorized all this stuff when they were trying to fix the sex mommy maid robot that your appliance was malfunctioning.
What?
So like that's the whole like feminist take on like what a wife is, right? In especially Western culture, you're a sex mommy maid appliance, and you can malfunction. So
Oh my.
I think some of what white women are regurgitating because of this being fed into the system is actually their like attempts to be rebooted to function, and it's weirding people out. Oh shit.
Oh my god. Okay, this also explains why I feel like really uncomfortable as a queer, like child-free person.
Yeah.
Like, I feel less like, I occasionally, when I was younger, used to get comments from outside these neurodivergent spheres, from mostly guys, sometimes women, about like, you might change your mind about not wanting kids. I've never gotten the whole like felt the subliminal pressure to like, oh, like we're women, we talk like this, like, it's like they look at me and they don't. I know, like, okay, maybe I'm expecting autistics to act like neurotypicals here, and like I'm like, why can't you just perceive that I'm not a stereotypical girly girl? I mean,
Yeah.
like, look at how I'm dressed. But I feel like they have two masks. The one around guys that's kind of fawning, and the one around women that's like, now that it's just us girls, trauma dump, trauma dump, trauma dump. And they can't like find a new third way for like a tomboyish queer woman.
Well, sure. And so what that comes down to, I think, is sort of what I look at a lot as a non-conforming gender person is that they don't have a way to just interact with someone as a whole person, right? As a person who not only doesn't conform to one of the two sort of halves of the human experience that misogyny tries to make us into, but isn't isn't attempting to be the opposite of that either, but is just
Oh,
like trying to be a whole person with all the different parts and stuff.
Right.
oh my
And
God.
Yeah.
Keep going, but I have another thing. I realized just now. You finish
you
your
go
thought,
ahead.
'cause okay, this is a
I
big
think that was
one.
basically my thought.
Okay, I'm going to preface this. I don't normally do anecdotes, but this one needs to happen. I was at the rap battle thing that I do, right? So I go to a big open, like crazy variety show. It's very cool, and I freestyle rap battle it. I was going to freestyle rap battle. I'm back. OBS
Oh, okay.
malfunctioned. Okay, so, all right, this is worth it. The computer gods won't stop me now. So, I was at this event, so they know me very, very well, and they're like, "You're gonna battle that guy, right?" And I look over, and is this taller white dude with like a brown hoodie and a backpack. I'm like, he looks terrifying, like in a bad way. Like my bars were gonna be, you look like you're, what was it? You look like you're about to take this too far. You look like I'm gonna need 5 people to walk me to my car. I was gonna say, you look, not to say that you dress bad, but you look like you shot the CEO who's your dad. So like um a lot was going on with this man. So then I was just kind of talking to people I know. There's someone named Miss K, and she's a burlesque performer who's like an Amazon. She's super tall. She's wearing, her outfit for the night, so obviously more burlesque, right? And she was saying this guy was staring at her creepily. I just happened to mention that I'm going against this guy because I was thinking about the bars, and she's like, "Oh," and that other men were noticing this guy being creepy. And then I go and talk to somebody I know who's a poet, and she's like a spoken word performer, and she's like, "Oh, I know that guy. He's off his meds and is schizophrenic, and he should not be competing." And so they actually threw him out because he was interrupting her during her spoken word, which was like super not cool. And the night before, he had gone to a spoken word and stood there menacingly instead of saying anything. So I thankfully did not have to go against this guy because I just happened to talk to 2 older women who are a bit older than me. And so there's the anecdote, because why do they go into trauma dumping? And now that it's just us girls, we have been taken by other women and told, "Don't go by him, don't go here, go over there." We have been checking on other women for our safety our whole lives because we're autistic and we're very fucking vulnerable, and they've tried to rescue us. My first friends, I was in 4th grade and I developed my boobs early, and I was getting harassed by boys, and I got adopted by the 8th grade girls, and I thought I was mature. They were trying to fucking rescue me. And it just occurred to me, this is what is happening.
Right. So, Jane, like this trauma dumping is actually an attempt to quickly dump out their safety map so that you can grow yours.
Yes, and because neurotypical girls would sometimes mother us, and we would tattletale all the people that were creeping us out. That's what I did. I went and I did that. Right. Because I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. And I talked to, I figured out what was wrong with that man in less than 15, 20 minutes. And if I had battled him, I could have been in like actual physical danger, like possibly permanently, because he could have become obsessed with me. So, dude.
Right. And also of interest, I'm about to mute myself, but also of interest, Jane, is like that it is very important for you and I and the kind of work that we're doing in this space to talk about and situate our trauma and how it relates to our experiences and our autism and everything, right? It's actually been vital repeatedly for us to situate those facts. So, like, obviously, just trauma dumping in the incorrect way isn't good, and especially not to be the only thing you're doing in a space.
Right.
Like Tara was sort of describing. But at the same time, there's something essential there, right?
Right, because also
Yes. Oh
can
my
I
gosh.
can I add something to this? I just need to finish this. When I was talking to the poet,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, schizophrenia. Oh, no wonder I was clocking it." And then I was sharing details with her about how I've seen the stare in somebody's eyes when they have schizophrenia and are in psychosis because I dated somebody who had that situation. Okay. So I was like,
Okay.
Oh, man.
oh, I know how to identify that. So I was sharing that with her to also get feedback so that in the future I listen to my instincts. I'm going to fucking cry. So, like, are we just trying to keep ourselves safe and we got used to checking in with the neurotypical people? And maybe this is more of a cultural thing in white women because, again, their therapization tells us to do this. I don't know. I don't fucking know. But, like, maybe there's other cultural versions of this checking of, like, am I okay? And then I gave information to this woman that I don't know very well about somebody I dated who had psychosis. Like, that's a lot. But I also needed to know, is that what we're talking about?
Right. Yeah. That
I feel like,
is a
yeah, go ahead.
you go.
Thanks. I was gonna say I feel like I usually take on the role of like kind of warning like autistic peers who are a little bit less like socially perceptive. Um, like my students, for example. I'm a speech language therapist. Um, but otherwise, but it's really nice that neurotypical girls actually did something nice for you.
100%. 100%. It was a
That
little
was definitely
messy.
not my experience, but
Yeah, it was a little messy. Like, they also, put me around older boys, which was not safe, but I got through that kind of okay.
oh,
Yeah. I mean, they dressed me up like a little, like, Barbie doll and stuff. They're like, "Oh, that's cute." Like, but outside of that, I mean, they had drug issues, but I had like a good home environment where that wasn't going to be something I wanted to try, but I could have got involved in drugs at that point too. So there is that.
I mean, I'm also really privileged in that way. Like, I grew up in a upper middle class family. I went to a private school. I basically had no friends, and it was kind of everyone against me. But there wasn't any like harassment like worries.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to ask, like, I actually don't know that much about schizophrenia. Like, what are the things that makes it like a bit more dangerous when like he's a man and you're a woman, for example?
Yes. So schizophrenia gets dangerous when people enter a psychotic or possibly a manic phase. So when when it stacks with these heightened affective states, they become extremely paranoid, and they may have not just like grandiose delusions where they think they're very important people, but they may think that other people are out to get them, and they may hear messages like that's when they hear messages in the television or in the radio or on the internet. So when they consume media, they think the media is delivering secret messages to them, and those could be messages of harming themselves or other people. And even just from the stress of, like, if this person commits suicide and you feel like it's on your watch, it can be very it can be a very unstable situation. So at that point, those people with schizophrenia who develop a psychotic episode need to be put on an antipsychotic to disrupt the episode. They can potentially come out of it on their own, but typically that's not the case. Like, it can last for a very long time, but it can be very destructive. And if you're around that person, they can develop like an obsession over you, and the meaning that of something you said, something benign that you say may now be imbued with special like bizarre delusions.
They're like very like paranoid.
Yes.
About everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how that would be. That might be that would be dangerous in a rap battle, right?
Right. Exactly. Not at all safe.
Like you diss each other, so.
Right. Like, that person I should not have been someone that person could know at that point, because then I would have potentially been exposed to a stalker.
And that's good. So like you can send him home and like he needs to rest up a bit, get his meds in.
Yep. Yes.
That's really cool.
So-
I love karaoke.
Oh, awesome. We should do a karaoke night.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be really fun. I'd
Right.
love that.
Okay, please share your
Um,
thought.
I would like- yeah. So yeah, like I really feel about the like trying to get a lay of the land. And some of the most like dysregulating situations I've been in have been in people like especially other neurodivergent people are trying to fill that mama bear role and like warn, like I'm unaware of some of the dangers and like realistically like what are the chances I could have gotten hurt? Like maybe not that super high, but my experience ends up being like, oh hey Tara, by the way, you should know like watch out for this and this and that. And I'm like, wait, what else do we need to watch out for? And then like they trauma dump their whole life story and it's just a lot to process. I'm just like, why does this have to be the way it is as an autistic woman? And then the tie to white culture is like, because it's the default in an individualist culture of the US. Where like everyone's for themselves versus like communities of color, they often like have their biases, and like ideas about how people should be, but there tends to be more like like if you go to a party that a friend is hosting, people are already kind of vetted, like because it's not this everyone for themselves, like because there's some level of we're from the same place, we should look out for each other. There's not the, oh, we won't kick out that person because they might have career capital that we want. So like and I think it's extreme, like in the Bay Area where there are a lot of ambitious people, and in Chicago tech as well, more than like like a non-career art group where people in Chicago are hanging out for fun. Where like everyone needs to for themselves get into these women's circles to hear the word of mouth. And like actually there is someone Bay Area rape girl who I'm not gonna like talk about trigger warning stuff, but that's just like her handle, and she put together a list of people who've been abusive. No, that wasn't them, sorry, that was someone else.
No, you're good.
Shoot. No, just realized like I don't want to draw like attention to anyone or anything. I don't know if there's a way to like cut out like a little part of the stream.
Yeah.
But
there is.
Yeah, basically like that part. Yeah, let's just say there's someone who sorry about that.
That's okay.
Multiple someones I think who put together this list. And then were like worried about being targeted themselves and then like stopped updating it. And apparently there's like a secret list somewhere, but it's like you gotta make it through a field of dysregulated people before you can get to that information. And then like I like sometimes don't voice my needs in the process, because if I'm like, oh, by the way you're talking is overwhelming for me, then I'm not going to get that information. And
yeah, we really need that. We need to be able to like say what we need in the moment and have people not read too much into the nuance of the words we're saying, because we need it right now.
Yeah, and like I've often felt like there's nowhere I feel safe, like both in terms of my autistic needs and in terms of safety as a woman. like it's super, super rare. And it's taken me like years to find those kind of spaces. And like just such a relief when I can find that they exist rather than having to rely on these like trauma dump shares of people adopting me within a mainstream space, but then they no show when they said they were gonna like be my buddy for the buddy system because they're going through shit, you know.
Yeah, we have, I think, a poorly reconstructed sort of doppelganger of the buddy system of autistic women, and I think I wonder how many people have it. I mean, I don't think this is exclusive to one group of people, but I do think there's a flavor of it that we're seeing, and it's very aggressive almost. It's almost like I got hurt, now no one will get hurt again. And I even can resonate with that, honestly. But that's
so possessive.
Yeah, it's right. That's not a good motivation for your behavior.
Like if someone notices like that, maybe like someone who's like just kind of tipping someone off is saying maybe something that could be slightly inaccurate, I think they should be able to jump in. I believe in it takes a village.
Yeah, kind of we don't have that in our culture, but it's more precise. That's how people live well.
I think I see it in myself sometimes when new people come to this space. I have this instinct that, after this conversation, like, oh, I'm trying to take this person in, like, as a protege and be like their go-to contact for updating them with every realization about the system that I've had in the past 4 years, which that's too much, right? To be trying to do in not just as a person, but like as a relationship with a new person, I think. And I think it comes from like kind of what you were saying about like no one should get hurt again. It's like, oh, I have found all these answers. So it's just like I need to connect with each new person here. So I have all the time they can give me for updating them on all the answers I have found, so they don't get hurt by not knowing all these things about the system that I figured out, right?
Right, and I question like what can be better, because like we also can't always be available at the moment when people want to know something, and I question like, is it just how much time and energy we spend kind of alone navigating spaces, if that makes sense, as opposed to just having people be kind of aware of how we're doing. Like, I see a culture in a lot of quote unquote communities where there's a lot of like, oh, go find your people, go have one-on-one conversations with a bunch of people. And then you don't like, the leaders wouldn't know what's happening behind closed doors, as opposed to if people are spending most of their time in calls like this, then the moderators would kind of have context of how someone's doing at like the cadence that they're spending time in the group. And then maybe one uncomfortable thing happens in a channel somewhere and they can talk to someone, but it's not like in the rap battle world where it's like, well, if you want to be known, you're gonna battle this guy you've never talked to, and you're scrambling to get intel on him from these people. Like in that moment.
Right.
I feel like that's one thing that is kind of eroded in community, and also the like having to interact with a bunch of people one-on-one can be a lot for autistic people versus having more public, like you can show up here, you can talk if you want to, you don't have to and there are
Yes, I love that.
people with more experience in this group here who can help you navigate stuff without you having to be like adopted by them and then, oh no, but we don't have bandwidth to also adopt the next person.
So that's like my jam often is just being in a space where it's lively and just being there and enjoying the atmosphere. Just like and like not having to talk and things. Although I also love seeing what's up with a lot of different people. It really depends on my mood. Honestly, like what I'd love to find is like what is a sort of safety system that works, because like I guess I needed a bit less of a safety system. At the same time, I didn't really like have one necessarily in like college. And like I'm just really like lucky because like I am a lot more perceptive than I am good at tailoring my message, like I guess naturally.
Yeah.
Like I'm better at understanding and perceiving than producing.
Well,
So that's just like,
the safety system
yeah.
thing is interesting because I think we attract people who have decided that's their job. Also, like neurotypical, I'm old enough now where this shouldn't be happening. I have neurotypical women who are younger than me who definitely are coming up trying to mother me. They're like, you look insecure, you don't look confident, let me help you.
That's gotta be annoying.
I mean it's not great, but I think it's coming from like, you're vulnerable, let me see if I can fix that. And I'm like, well, you can't, I'm just autistic. You're clocking that I'm autistic. Yes, I am vulnerable. Do you want to like talk to the people that are going to attack me and not me? Like
Good point.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I would love to be like escorted at a it doesn't need to be a one-on-one escort, but I would love to be able to walk into an event and like sit with a group like this, preferably including at least one of the leaders for starters, and then see, do I feel comfortable with anyone else, as opposed to, ooh, you have one thing in common with this person, go have a one-on-one conversation with them.
Right.
And then before you're even done, there's someone else standing in front of you.
Yeah. I keep wondering also about like people who've like never like kind of found a place to belong, like growing up, so like they don't know how they're like what it should feel like when they belong.
Yes. I still don't know if I can, because our belonging is so, I think our belonging is impacted by autism because I think it's a visual spatial navigation disability that then gets extended into the abstract thing of social skills. Like that's the concrete skill, the material reality that then is abstracted for humans to be able to do the skill just as a species, right? So like I don't understand what belonging means. I don't think we understand that. I don't think we have the like infrastructure in our brain to know what neurotypicals actually mean by belonging. And I that's not to say it's not to say that the way that we're using the word doesn't have its own meaning, but we haven't explored it properly is what I will offer as a possible thing going on with us. And that we should be very wary about neurotypical people telling us where we belong, because we cannot sustain that. We don't understand it. If we do go over there, you are supposed to flexibly at all times renegotiate and figure out where you belong, because that's the social skill. So if you plop us there, we're not going to be able to do anything. We're a fucking dud. So it's not actually a good idea for neurotypical people to assign to us a place that we belong, but they think they do.
Yeah. Right. Like I'm I'm also questioning like am I like quote unquote queer enough? Like am I queer? How so? And like someone I was in touch with said like, oh, let's go into a queer space and let's see like how you vibe there.
Oh wow.
And I'm like,
That's
is like, I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't base your sexuality off of your experience with one space. Have you watched Hannah Gatsby's comedy?
Or like, I don't know if it was just based on one space, but like as a starter, but like Hannah Gatsby, I have not.
So, she is an autistic lesbian comedian, and
Oh, cool.
she has this bit about queer culture, and like she talks about the parade, and she's like, I look at that and I don't see my people. Like, where are the quiet gays?
That's great. Or the if I may say so, the weirdos.
Well, that's the weirdo thing too. This is actually a good segue. So I think what happens with us is we actually end up with friend groups if we go organically about that people wouldn't understand why we're friends with all of these people. Like genuinely would get
Yes.
confused. And so our belonging does not have a place. Our belonging has a shared activity, and the number of people that can share in an activity is actually much more broad. Well, it's higher and broader than the number of people that can share in a place. Even just from like the physics of that metaphor, we're extending it to an abstract thing, but I think we understand it in the concrete metaphor first. So the abstraction is actually rooted in our understanding of, oh, if I can only be in one place with people, I can't be in two places and be with that person at the same time. And even the internet kind of breaks our brains around this, I think, in my opinion. But right, and so, but if you're working on something, you could put the object down and the person could pick it up at a different time. That's how books work. That's how education works. We pick up the thing that somebody who's probably long dead put down, right? So we need to associate around activities, but that makes our like pool of association very weird.
Right, because that's not the basis of like how typical people like choose their friends. It's more about like, do they behave the same, I
Yeah.
think.
Does this room look cohesive? Does the party and the decorations, which are the people, fit the theme?
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, they don't think about like, do I have fun with this person? Or like often I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll say like
That's
I think
how,
they have
yeah.
I think their way of I will say I think their way of working produces a kind of fun, but it's not one that we relate to. And I think it's the fun of figuring out when the rules have changed in this there's this narrow window of how much the rules can change, and they're able to know when you're out of bounds and we don't, and then we become ostracized. So I think there's a fun in that. I think it's competitive. I think it's like football and whatever other things they invent that maybe we don't quite get unless we analyze the mechanics. Then we kind of do, right? And yeah, anyways, that's a whole tangent. But okay.
Well, I'm
but
Brazilian. I watch football.
yeah, but like I bet you like the mechanics are more interesting to you than the average person. So you're like interested in why it's working more than the person who is interested in their team winning and the feeling of the team and the merchandise of the team and the mascot of the team and the colors of the team and the vibe of the team. So the team aspect of it, the teaming, is very interesting for them, and I think it's fun. But I think for us, it's just unparticipatable. That is where our disability is. So I think they have fun with each other, but it's very limited. And occasionally they'll say they've skipped the small talk, or they're getting really deep, or they're being very real with each other. And then they're doing what we consider fun, which is to discuss the subject, the substance of something.
There it is. No, yeah, I felt belonging for a few months.
Also,
like,
sorry, very, very quickly, that teaming, I think, is one of the things that happens with the way we talk about the queer community. Is like there's people who are on the I go to the Pride Parade and do public queerness in this way that talking about it, how Jane just did, reminds me of people going to football games for the team.
Huh. Like, I don't know. I have a feeling you're not saying, like, for example, lesbians are better than gays.
Right.
I don't know.
No, I'm talking I'm talking about there's this kind of like the team I'm talking about is the queer team, right?
Uh,
Right. And that's why I talk about it as like it could be a subculture where like just because you are queer doesn't mean you fit into that subculture,
mhm.
right?
Right, like dissing straight people, like just because,
Mhm.
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 or like I don't know. Like
Well,
I've seen a lot of memes that say the straights are at it again.
and that's okay, so this is why I have a hard time. I'm a feminist, but in the sense of like I care about deeply the not just the theory but the application of it, but like what are we actually saying when we say feminism is a set of ideas? What ideas are those, right? So then I get frustrated because people then meme it and run around and I'm like, but that's not an analysis of the situation. What are you doing? Like, oh, you're signaling to people that this is the right place to be. Okay, so do you see what I'm saying? Place to be. Like this is why I have my split of
Uh,
I split it as doing as arriving and doing as building. And I think a typical person, it's kind of like a seesaw if it is split, or maybe it's already baked caked where there's really no separation. But they experience these motivations as like I want to go to a place, arrive at a place, and that's how they think of doing. Like the base concept of do becomes arrive at a place. And for
uh-huh.
us, that's not accessible because it's like a boulder is on one side of the seesaw and we're just doing as building. We think of doing as constructing and building and
Right.
understanding and turning it around an object in our hands while we stay in one
And
place.
so then being on the team is itself a place that they can
Yes.
enjoy situating themselves in like an ongoing form, right? So
Yeah.
when they're sharing what's up with the straights memes, they're sort of performing the fact that they're in the place of like
Mhm.
team queer,
We're over here.
right?
What's going on over there? We
Right,
can
and
we can
it
see
helps them
because we're over
situate
here,
each
we see
other as
them from the
well,
outside.
right?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
So you can see how it's a social thing where it's like if someone else looks at this meme and gets that same feeling, then they're in the same place as you.
They're in the same place as me. Yes. They've arrived at the same place. So they've done it. They've done it. You've done it. And so then I get frustrated with feminism. Like, you haven't done feminism, though. Like, doing feminism, doing to me means building, constructing, analyzing, collaborating on some project
Uh-huh.
that's been ongoing. And I'm like, but you haven't done it. They're like, no, but we've done it because we're here. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And this, I think, is like
Right.
a
And
primary
it's an
conflict with us.
ongoing, and it has to be an ongoing practice too, like feminism, right?
Yes.
You have to be applying it as a thing that you're doing to understand and navigate the world, right? So a lot of people, they learn about feminism as if it's like done, and they just have to get to that place that whichever feminist they're reading got to,
Yes.
and
Uh-huh.
then sort of like
It
apply
just
it to
becomes a
the world
label.
from there as if it's finished.
It becomes a trophy. The way that everything works in, again, capitalism, yes, but like all capitalism works because it uses doing as arriving. I think this is more fundamental than even that system. That this is a system of organizing motivation, and that it doesn't work for people with certain disabilities because the brain can't supply us the motivation because it can't construct the framework to begin with, or maybe the motivation's broken, which may be more the ADHD thing. I'm not sure about that yet. I need to talk to people who have more wherewithal in neuroscience. But anyways, but all that to say, like, yeah, so they want the destination because then you receive a plaque. You receive social acknowledgement. And even if we don't understand that concept very well, we see that people who have those plaques are treated better. So the plaque is a trait. So if we're the ones that analyze traits of objects, we're like, okay, I need some plaques or else I'm fucked. But the truth is, the plaques don't matter. The plaques are just signifiers that you can play the game of arriving. You can become a winner and a winner and a winner and a winner. And this is how we get someone like Trump organizing a country for some reason. But so basically, the plaque, we as autistics, I think we need to understand, even if we somehow could get the plaque, it wouldn't work because the plaque isn't the thing. The plaque is just for them to get a top off of the hit that they're already getting from doing as arriving, which is a motivation system that rewards them. And it's an active, continuous, constant system, is my theory. And that, I hope that sounds convincing that I'm describing reality, because I think that I am. And so I think for us, autistic people and neurodivergent people broadly who relate to what I'm saying, we need to know that it's actually more dangerous, even if it is a subculture that has therapy speak and all this other stuff about how kind they are, for us to try to receive awards there, because those are people where it'll be even harder to go back to the mainstream and ask for help when we're being abused, because these are weird people. So we have a very strange dynamic coming into play, and we do want more people who are seen as weird to be seen as acceptable. But we as autistic people are so vulnerable to our lives not working well that we get caught up in exploitation and abuse from these people who don't improve our activities of daily living, physically changing our environments and our life circumstances. So this is a problem, and I'm only scraping the surface of it, but I think this is a good conversation to kind of accidentally stumble upon or start to build intentionally.
Wow. Okay. You
That's amazing.
described one of the catalysts for my autistic burnout that I've been stuck in for over a year. So basically I ended up in most of my friends are neurodivergent, ADHD, some autistic on top of it. Autistic non-ADHD is more of a minority, actually, but a couple.
Hello.
But yeah, it started out as fun, during the pandemic, self-discovery together. Then as we were trying to navigate how do we make a living and stuff, and everyone in American culture, we're not really taught healthy boundaries and what's healthy to expect from people and how to build a support system more than a couple people. And so lots of those kind of issues can happen anywhere, but they present a bit differently with neurodivergent people. And then I can't just go to the local bar and vent about what happened and get actually helpful solutions. I need to my first few months working with a therapist, late 2022 to early 2023, was all, how do I deal with this weird situation with this person who is not acting in a healthy way, or even in, a neurotypical unhealthy way. And so I feel like I came out having somewhat learned a tiny bit about issues in these very specific spaces. I don't know enough to navigate them safely, and I also don't if I put in a ton of effort to learn about that, that's likely not going to get me closer to be able to make a living sustainably unless I become a neurodiversity coach. But that would be years after figuring my own stuff out. And to be honest, most of the time I don't wish I wasn't autistic, but that's sorry, I hope this isn't traumatizing, but okay, just what it means is just that's one situation where I'm just too overwhelmed beyond my capacity. No matter what I do, I can't find a solution. Is I need to understand. Okay, I skipped a phase. Sorry. So there was that, and then there was seeking out more neurodivergent people who claimed to have stuff figured out and used the therapy speak and took me under their wing and were in my kind of career. And I thought, okay, like, because it's too much to patch together how to do the job and how to function while neurodivergent. And like, okay, maybe, you know, there are some people who can teach me both. And most of them, they brought so much drama and trauma into my life so fast. And I'm just like, is like there any other way to make these kind of career paths accessible to me? And then like since eventually I started finding healthier people who are also neurodivergent. But
And just very, very quickly, and is if I have in fact found one of the answers that can actually help you, and I'm the kind of person that you're sort of looking for who has some of the answers, then I'm going to be capable of writing a book and publishing it and getting the ideas out there. And if I can't successfully do that, I haven't successfully found those answers. And by putting it into a book,
yeah,
it becomes an external object separated from me and whatever personal issues I have, like you're talking about these other
yes,
people having drama with them. That's personal issue.
yeah. Oh my god, that is such a good distinction. Yeah, like some people can engage with without engaging with their issues. Yeah, they don't have the answers. That is so true. Like there are a lot of people who want to kind of play test their ability to help neurodivergent people because it's something they'd like to do because they've gotten hurt and they don't want anyone else getting hurt. But guess who they're hurting in the process of trying to figure that out, and like everyone figuring it out in a silo. And you'd mentioned Midwestern women. Yeah, it's like people talk about it at a high level, therapy, not on a deep level where it can actually help each other.
Right.
Which it feels kind of nana as someone who's looking for a therapist, which is dysregulating to hear at the dinner party. But yeah, and then there are a lot of people who know too little things about neurodiversity and think they're in this position to adopt people because they haven't been exposed to groups like this to see like you know, if they had, they'd probably just recommend that we come here instead.
Let me give you my honest opinion. This is going to sound maybe more controversial, but I'm having an epiphany with everything we're saying. I think they're saying therapy because that's where the neurotypicals told us we belonged, in therapy. So we are still trying to follow. The neurotypical person says, if you go over here, you will be in the right place and you will belong, even though that's not what their belonging is about. There is no right place to go. The activity is to exchange ever-changing rules of what's in and out, what will make you closer in affiliation with people or seem more important and powerful to people or whatever. So it's your status, right? So that's what they're actually doing. And that's like so dynamic.
We're trying to change you to belong somewhere.
Right.
Right.
So they're trying to get us out of their way.
The differentiation would be if they are suggesting very specific kinds of therapy that work for them. Or trying to say, my therapist is great, and trying to recommend that specific one to you. Instead of this general idea, therapy is good. Because yes, like James, absolutely right. We were told you're having problems of this kind. You belong in therapy. I do not belong in therapy the way therapy exists. I've tried going there, and they were not able to understand and help me.
And the problem is, so I have a new doctor, and I do like my doctor. It's an upgrade from my last doctor, who was even worse. But this doctor, it was my first appointment, so we were kind of going over everything. And at one point, he asked me about like mental state and stuff because I have all of this stuff on my record now, right, about anxiety and depression, et cetera, and so forth, including like even things about ideation and stuff that I didn't know they added to my record. It's really not good. But anyway, so then I said to him, I'm like, well, I'm the problem is, I started crying. I look at my peers and I can't earn money like them. I can't be independent like them, and I don't know what to do because I'm basically so I'm in danger. I don't know what to do, and it's humiliating and disappointing. And he said, like, go to see a therapist. Well, guess what? My insurance doesn't cover the specialist autistic therapist that I tried to find. And then I have to, so he told me to find a therapist, and I was like, oh, I should try looking again because there's more autistic trained, therapists and specialists, which is true, but now I have to navigate insurance. So even when they say that to us, a doctor should kind of know better that me trying to navigate insurance for a specialty problem is going to be a fucking disaster. And I had to call my insurance, and my insurance might not cover it. So I don't know how much money I have dumped into therapy, and I'm not going to go to another therapist unless they can guarantee me I'm going to be making a larger fucking salary at the end of it. Like, if that, I'm sorry, I'm just pissed off. Like, if that is not happening at the end of therapy, I'm not fucking going.
Don't be sorry, Jane.
That's
an extremely important and good point, right? Because I'm in a position where I'm worse off financially than you, right? I'm on a super fixed income. And if I try to make the decision to like invest this tiny amount of money I have into therapy, the odds of it paying off and me getting a job are astronomically low, right? So I'd just be throwing that money away when increasing my income somehow is actually part of the bedrock of my mental health situation right now.
Right.
Yeah. I really feel that. And another dimension, which I'm kind of debating whether to even say something like this, because I'll caveat it. Like, there are situations where, like, okay, if it is like trauma or like, like mental health stuff that's not gonna be fixed by making more money. I don't want to dissuade anyone from therapy, but I also, I want to be really picky about vetting therapists before getting invested, because I don't want to spend my money for the system to learn about how to help people like me.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend more money to get less than a neurotypical.
Because it's dawning on me, if therapy is cultivated in the West about white women who are unmarriable becoming marriable, then is that why I had a therapist tell me I should try to date older men? Is that why that happened in my early 20s? Because then he would pay for me because I'm a fucking dud. That's what's happening. I want my therapist to tell me how many women with my disabilities after working with you are earning 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% more money than they were. I want to know that.
Right. And then like my experience with therapists has been all about how can we make you functional within capitalism? How can we get you applying for jobs and doing jobs and stuff?
Didn't happen to me.
I wasn't in the place yet where that could even help me.
Right? And they never even suggested that.
Myself and but like it also wasn't working for me because I wasn't in a place where if I got a job, I'd be able to keep it.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. This is fascinating. So this is the helpful thing of being able to compare notes about how our dimorphism was interpreted by our species to give us a different narrative. I am now convinced, and I would like to be unconvinced, but I'm so far not there, that no woman should go to a therapist unless the person tells them how much the income or salary has improved in their clients that are also women, or at least marginalized in a similar sense that like you could have that concern of being under and unemployed, which is kind of all of us. And then for people who are
a minor caveat, like no woman should send themselves to the therapist and like that. And also like some people are in a much more extreme place mentally, right? Where they're having, like there are women out there who are having psychotic breaks, right?
Exactly. Yes. And if work is not the issue, then it needs to be delineated as such. And then you need to know why the modality is going to help you with your specific, mental pathology or at least distress. Like at least it may not be acute, it could be episodic, it could be you're just going through it right now. But if this is something you're gonna have to plan for in the fucking future, then what are the tools that work and what modality provides those tools? We should be getting that information. Okay, all right, let's take a pause.
So there are two lists. Yeah, I think it's ndtherapists.com and neurodivergentpractitioners.org. They might both be, I think they're both .org. Or no, ndtherapist.org and neurodivergentpractitioners.org, I think. They're like directories of therapists who are neurodivergent themselves and specialize in helping neurodivergent people. But when I like looked at those lists for Illinois, a lot of them, like, one, they don't say what kind of neurodivergent they are. And then, like, if I, like, they mention specializing in neurodivergence on that list, but then if I Google them somewhere else, it's like queer or, which, like, okay, there's overlap, but, like, I really want someone who is dedicated to focusing on,
Yeah.
But
and then
you have to recognize that these are people motivated by capitalism to get clients, and for some or a lot of them, words like neurodivergent or queer are like economic buzzwords that they're trying to attach to their profiles.
Oh my gosh! Okay,
they're not as true. They have expertise there.
I want to write this down, and tell this to my coach, who has been continuing to like encourage me to seek therapy and like telling me how not getting therapy is hurting me. But I have just been feeling so triggered by the dynamics that I run into with therapist shopping.
You've told me,
using and as buzzwords. I really think, okay, like that vocabulary there, like that's something I need to say. And my other point, what was it? Okay. Oh yeah. So how this could be improved is you could have a similar directory of like what do they think the point of therapy is? What specific outcomes have they helped people with? Are there any specific things that they have helped, at least like 20% of their clients with? Like, okay, maybe they work with a lot of people dealing with work stuff or a lot of people dealing with relationships. Okay, like there are couples therapists you can find, but if you're dealing with work stuff, like where do you go? Why is that not a specialty which you can find? And yeah, like I would love to see that kind of thing. I'm seeing some like posting on Instagram. A lot of them are like people who train therapists and aren't practicing anymore, or like that's not filtered by like what states they accept people from.
And you still have to navigate your insurance and see if they're all out of network and what your insurance is. There should be a separate insurance plan for autistic people.
Like, and should be able to seek out of state. Because I don't want, like, I get the Midwestern vibe when I'm shopping, and that hella triggers me.
Yeah, in a bad way.
I want to leave the Midwest.
I have to assume that when blind people go to the doctor, they don't get handed the forms to fill out themselves the same way everyone else is.
Right.
This is just a really good example of what Jane is saying. Like, there needs to be a similar separate system for autistic people specifically who have trouble engaging with those forms.
Yes.
And other things about the system.
Yeah, and also then the like intake for these therapists, like there was one who tried to be neuroaffirming, and her form was like, fill this out in as much detail as possible, and then like, okay, what's your work situation like? Have you had any bad experiences? What's your family like? Identities, all that. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just surface all the trauma at once while I'm alone.
Oh God,
I'm actually currently in the process of figuring out how to fill out a intake form like that for a neurodevelopmental psychologist consult. And they didn't even say in as much detail as possible. But the moment they say that, I'm like, okay, so like, I could legitimately write a 300-page
No, I was about to say, you want my memoir? Okay, the memoir would cover that.
Legitimately. Like,
Yeah.
where the right? They should be giving like general word count suggestions for some of these questions.
Yes.
Because people like us have no idea at all. Like literally, I do not know if it will be better for me to answer in as few words as possible or as many words as possible with the asterisk
And
like less than 2 pages.
The answer
Right.
is the answer to that is constantly changing in a social quagmire that is also now simultaneously online, and they're tracking it so they know what the right answer is. And guess what? It would have been different in 1981 and 1982 and 1983 and 1984, and just like it'll be different in July what the fucking answer is.
And if it wasn't autistic, I'd be able to figure this out for myself because I do know the context for the thing I'm filling out, right? Like I'm going to have a 90-minute consult where hopefully I get an autism diagnosis and maybe some others, but like but I don't have context for how much time is he even going to have to read my answers?
Yes, exactly.
Before the session.
Exactly.
At which point am I putting in too much detail for him to be able to absorb in the time that's attached to this? Because I have no idea how much time that is.
No, for me though, it's like the emotional labor. It's like saying your story 7 times to 7 different therapists. I'm like, could one of you please record me speaking my entire life and then send it to the
I have very seriously thought about and intended to make a slideshow presentation for that exact thing. For the getting to know me thing. And be like, look, I want you to watch this and know what's in here before I pay you for our first session. Right? I don't want to spend time that I am paying you for on something I've already regurgitated 20 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's gonna sound different, but then again, like, I don't really have a lot of intonation and facial expression when I'm relaxed anyway, so you're not gonna get a very different version.
Right. And in fact, I'm aiming for the most precise version. So it's not going to be like, oh, I'm aware that this is a more acceptable way to say it. I may even caveat things and be like, I have currently been watching all of society. This is what I think they think of my story currently. If you need to know that because you give a shit about that, here's what I think it is. Blah, 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 blah.
And if I try to do it myself each time, like I have memory issues. I'm not able to remember in the moment all the things I want to, let alone what, like Jane was saying, I would create the most precise, cut back version possible, given in the right order to automatically present. And I can't even approach doing that in a one-off. Which, as an aside, is like the issue that I have with the school system, how it hasn't been updated basically at all in over 100 years, because it makes no sense to me that every class isn't taught with like a magic school bus episode, which is then supported by the live teacher, right? Like, why are we recreating each lesson in the lesson plan, each class?
Right, because then if we had the same lesson plan, then everyone could be study buddies when they go on social media and be like, hey, what did you think of the lesson today, guys? Why aren't we doing it like, oh my god, god damn it!
I haven't talked to a single person who got to watch, Magic School Bus during class sometimes, who didn't find it an easier and better way to learn the things than the normal way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I wish that more things could just be like best practices could be captured in granularity where people can just copy them basically, like, and then make tweaks.
That is so obvious.
As opposed to talking at this really high level where they have to do the implementation on their own. Like, okay, this therapist probably learned that some autistic people aren't good at the spot. So let's give them this long questionnaire. But if there was like conversation about how word lengths are helpful and blah, like maybe some examples that they could then tweak. Because I know, like, to their credit, they did pay for Dr. Neff's like booklets on, autistic burnout and other things. But there's not a good, like, okay, if we're going to do therapy for neurodivergent people, here are some, like, do's and don'ts, basically. There are one-off webinars about it where people can go to get overwhelmed and misinterpret everything, but there's not a, like, guide. As far as I know.
Yeah, I remember us talking about this at some point. Like, I feel like people in psychology just often just use the term neurodivergent, but then the rest of what they say kind of just sounds like traditional views on autism. Like, it's just kind of they copy paste a few terms and like a few paragraphs down they just say like, I don't know, I don't know, things that sound like broken.
Mm-hmm. You have social problems.
Like,
Bibbidi
that's not
bobbidi
the
boo.
neurodiversity movement.
Yeah, it's not. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
At that point, I want testimonials from autistic people that they've helped, saying
Yes.
what specific way they were helped. Right.
I want reviews. Like I was just saying in the chat, like, so look, I don't watch some TV shows because I don't have access to them, but I enjoy watching people do deep dives and analysis. So Severance, right? I'm watching, quote unquote, watching it by listening to people analyze it, and I just was listening to the new season 2 analysis, right? I did that with Westworld too. There's so many people who do that, who are, some of them are neurodivergent as well as just holistic, but people are just primed to do that as humans. How do we not observe that that's what humans do and give them a standardized curriculum, a standardized fucking therapy modality, and then we all then analyze, well, what do we think about it? Is it helping you? Is it doing this? We have to review the same fucking product. Why aren't we reviewing the same product when we're able to review the same TV show and the same movie? And if this is a product and we're going to buy it, then why can't we do that? Yes. Why do I have a personal
dating relationship?
Why is my therapist my own personal Jesus, wizard, freaking, genie and lamp? Why do I get a personal fucking lamp if we're all supposed to be doing the same therapy?
Like when psychology only listen to us for like 5 minutes and think they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and let's say I want to have a relationship. I want relationship therapy. I need to date a bunch of therapists now before I can have help with my dating life?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. And this also, like, I immediately am seeing the opposite contrast, the like similarities in the whole history of medicine and the medicalization of things, and the way women have been, how midwives were sort of kicked out of their own profession when doctors started to care about women's bodies and births. And the just general idea of like the doctor as this sort of paternal god-ish figure, right? Doctor knows best. And so like the whole science of psychology isn't being attempted to be turned into a kill yourself situation, right? Because there's this sort of assumption that you're going to need a daddy figure or mother figure in the process who knows better than you do. Because again, there's the beginning assumption of the whole mental health situation is that like this is a broken person who can't fit into society and is either dangerous to others or themselves, right? And we're at like, no, we have neurodevelopmental disorders, but those beginning assumptions are still baked into every part of the structure.
Oh my, okay, I'm looking at what James saying in the chat, like therapy, dating training for women as a therapist, your stopgap husband. When I've been learning about trauma therapy and how like it's supposed to be like model relationship for you to learn how to have healthy relationships, I'm like, I don't trust anyone that much. And I know like relationships with everyone are going to be different. I feel like what I actually need is to meet lots of healthy people and put it together. Have someone to talk it through, not someone to model
No,
relationships.
they modeled a kind of person. That's why we're becoming therapists and to our friends. We don't, the relationship is the doing as arriving. The relationship is their little XY graph of like affiliation and status. I forget what they call status, something else too, but like basically power and stuff like whatever. But so status and affiliation, right? That's what they think a relationship is being good at that, which we will never be good at. So what we did was memorize all of the features of the therapist and then copy it as another fucking mask.
That's where I feel like I don't really know what to think, because like I honestly work well with scripts, and I feel like a form of masking for me is trying to deviate from those scripts so that I sound more natural and spontaneous.
Right.
So like, when are these scripts beneficial and when are they masking, right?
Right, they
Like,
are beneficial.
If I
Yeah,
weren't masking, I would just, if I weren't masking, I just default to like my almost monotone like intonation right now, or just like I know, saying the same things I say every day because this is literally what I want to say. Like, I like sometimes I want to say something different, but like I just like doing the things I do, and I think that sometimes I communicate more through doing. But then again, I also like this kind of expanding my ideas and talking about things like this. And that also ties into what I was thinking earlier. Like, we talk about therapy speak. Sometimes I find myself falling into that. What? Oh, that's just my boyfriend. I find myself falling into therapy speak as a kind of, as a kind of script, because I otherwise would feel a little bit of social burnout because I'd have to keep generating all of these original messages.
It's better to lean on the systems that you already know. You can plug a person in as a variable and then you put them through the therapy widget and watch it and they come out the other side okay. I totally know that that's like a time and mental saver. Like, it's like, oh, I will give you the tool that fixes you. Here you go. Because they tried to fix us, but they didn't understand what they were trying to fix about us. They were trying to fix how we navigate this social ability that I'm calling doing as arriving, but that is what is impaired in us and it's impossible to fix. I want to get money anyway in a non-abusive way, right? I need to have money to do the doing is building that I want, because I have to buy materials. So I need to be able to buy my materials, and that's all I want from a therapist, is how do I get to buy the materials, not like how do I do a thing that I'm physically unable to do. Oh shit.
Yes, that's true, and I wasn't thinking about the other side of it. I'm sorry. Like,
no, you're good.
It's something that I have to resist. Like, thinking that I know exactly what the other person needs, because I just really have this like push to like give advice because I can understand more things than you can.
Yeah, no, I have the same thing, and like our auditory processing can like blip out sometimes, and we do have really good content in our own brain too. So I think that's understandable. I don't think that's bad. I think that's just like a quirk that will work out about like that's the least of our problems, but I can relate to that too. And it's not us being arrogant. We are trying very desperately to grab onto what the hell is the thing in front of us. And everyone's like, don't look at the thing in front of you, look at the game we're playing. I'm like, but the thing. They're like, and when the thing is like the actual literal earth, they're like, oh no, don't look at the thing, look at the game we're playing. I'm like, I think you're murdering people, and I think you're going to make it impossible for us to have a habitable planet. And they're like, no, but don't look at the thing, the game we're playing. Like, it's absolutely
Right.
essential that we have a chance to say, no, what we're doing is important, even if it's not coordinated or elegant, how could it be under these conditions?
Yeah, it's like you can't do, okay, when the stage is set up for doing as arriving, doing as building is not gonna look elegant.
Right, exactly.
Speaking out about very real things like the climate crisis. And she's like, you don't need to just compartmentalize it. But then if I don't find a place to like act on it, like right now I'm extremely busy with work. It's just that there's just been a heavy load of psychologist is late on reports. Like if I don't find a place to like act on it, then
Cut out.
right? Somewhere.
Sorry.
Cut out for me after you said if you can't find a
Hey,
place.
sorry, I'm just moving to my apartment.
Okay.
Sorry, what were you just saying?
Oh, I just said you cut out after, like, if you can't find a place to act on it. I'm guessing it just, like, lingers in your head then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's honestly something that yeah. We usually go this way? Okay. It's something that I've wanted to like help out with since I was younger. But I just it's weird because I don't have a natural like inclination toward climate or biology. I'm very uninterested in it unless it has to do with the brain. Or really other things. It's just starting to expand. But I'm just inclined toward languages, linguistics, brain, psychology. So it's hard to find motivation even though I'm really worried about it.
Hear that. I'm kind of feeling a bit similar about community building where like I really want certain kinds of community to exist. But when I think about like how I feel hosting, like there are moments that feel amazing, but the thinking through everything beforehand and all of the energy, I'm just like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to sustainably do it on top of even a part-time job. But I love analyzing spaces and sharing what doesn't work. And I've kind of like pressured myself to want to be a community builder because I see what a terrible job the doing as arriving people using neurodiversity as a buzzword like
or anything else
is
a buzzword.
Yeah, you have to replace them, but this is the trick, right? They've given themselves the plaque, right? They figured a way to get the plaque. So they have the skill enough to get the plaque. We do not have that skill, and we have to get the plaque from them because the plaque says, give me money. You exchange the title for the money, and we need their fucking money. I'm sorry, I hate the F word, but sometimes for emphasis. We need their money. They don't deserve that money, and you know it. They're charlatans. We need the money to develop the theory. We aren't even at the point of implementation. We are not at the point of implementation. And they are acting like we are. So that's how I know their credentials are bullshit.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I've actually been thinking about like how to build a community that caters to our executive function challenges. Like that's the biggest part of autism that impacts me right now.
Yeah.
Is executive function challenges. And I can understand how everyone keeps disappearing sometimes in these communities. I have sorry for the cars. I also have that, and I'm trying to like I really want to be able to like remind people, especially when I get into the habit of going to places. So that like they will remember to go, not because they're not motivated, we just forget.
Yeah, for sure. And then when it's like a community with a bunch of people with different like there's that, and then there's also just navigating life as neurodivergent people. Like you know, telling you about this call, for example, like there's a bit of a window. It doesn't always start at like an exact time.
Right. I'd like it to. I would love it
I'm
to.
not someone who likes messaging people to remind people. I know. Nothing against you. I'm just saying.
No, it's
this
real.
is the reality of it.
It's real. Yeah, 100%.
And then when I like was trying to build my own group, you know, and I messaged like 5 people to tell them to show up to something if they'd like to. They messaged me back about a bunch of other things. And I ended up really overwhelmed as I'm like
jeez.
on public transit making it to the eye doctor. And I'm just like there has to be a better way. And then add the weird culture on top of it. Like, okay, there are situations where like with people outside of the neurodiversity sphere, I have a calendar tool. It sends people reminders. There are people who no-showed, but
I need alarms.
It's not like oh, actually, can I call you in 15 minutes? No, can I call you in 15 more? Can I call you when I'm done with this thing? Like, that happens a lot more with neurodivergent people. Or, like, we'll be planning to talk about such and such, and then end up talking about something completely different. Which, like, I'm okay with in a space like this where I can leave if I don't like it. But if it's, like, a one-on-one, and someone wants my thoughts on something, and I haven't had time to structure them, you know, like all of this stuff that's a challenge for my neurodivergence tends to come up more with other neurodivergent people. So, or not that was too much of a generalization, but like certain things.
I also have a theory about that.
To hear it.
No, yeah. I honestly think that like one of the reasons that I have more difficulty in interacting with neurodivergent people is because I've been like I've kind of been brainwashed into like knowing what to expect from typical people. Like I have not met one autistic person who was not extremely autistic until college. So I just learned how to survive in the neurotypical wilderness. And like just when I talk to another neurodivergent, I'm like, wait, no, I expected you to say something there. Now what do I do?
Right. There's that aspect of like the not, being socialized for it. And then there's also the what if everyone in the room has time blindness? And there's not the neurotypical who's usually like, okay, you guys, so like we need to build like systems for that, basically. Like maybe have a timer or like have multiple people watching. Is there someone who didn't get to talk yet?
No, yeah, and I think that's where like a good blend is a good idea. Like a lot of different types of neurodivergent or autistic.
Well, and also some goddamn neurotypicals that like want to know what's going on. We need some of the neurotypicals to know this information about themselves. And if they
awesome.
You see what I'm saying? We need some that are like, oh, I would rather have, in my opinion, more doing as building practice. It's like practicing a language to an extent where it's like if this doesn't happen, it's atrophying. I think it's more intense than a language because it's more fundamental. But we actually need some neurotypicals because they'll also have a little bit of an instinct of like, do you guys know that you can't be in the same space together? And we're like, what? What do you mean we can't be in the same space? Because some of us will be like, but I'm working on this thing, and then the other people can't work on that thing because that's their disability. And we don't see it, and they basically threw a bunch of people who have incompatible disabilities into a room together because we're all the ones that are supposed to not work in society. You're all the broken toys, so they threw us in the junk drawer together. That also is a problem. So we need some ability to say like, at this time these neurodivergencies conflict, and at this time we need to have like some holistic people use their ability to do spatial like coordination to give us insights too, but they need to do it without being the king of the fucking hill.
Yeah, that would be so nice. I would be careful, like just like all the time saying like we need holistic people, because like I think another part of it is like the autistic people who like don't like they see that something's not meeting their needs, like learning to speak up, even though that like not
Yeah.
everyone can do that.
Yeah.
And they can also lean on other disabled people.
Yes. Well, here's what I'll say.
Right.
I saw a quote the other day. I guess this will frame what I'm saying a little bit better because I agree with you. There's a specific point. It said, like, men don't have to figure out how to be part of the feminist movement. Men need to make the spaces they already have in society feminist.
I see. No, yeah,
Mm.
agreed.
Right. So
I see.
yeah. So it's the allistic people actually have to understand this is not a niche issue. This is their issue. This is their direct issue because our brains deviate from theirs in a way that gives them insight into like all brains, and they cannot claim to be leaders if they don't understand this, because then their whole model of all brains is wrong if it can't account for and deal with us. So the insights and it will challenge their claim to leadership too, because they shouldn't have this hegemony the way that they do. It's an exploitation, I think, of how their brain likes to organize information that makes them feel validated in being leaders when they shouldn't be. They don't know what they're talking
Right,
about.
if they can effectively help us.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
if they can effectively help us, then that means that they understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's where they're going to use their communication skills.
Right. And this is the cop out I'm seeing,
Uh-huh.
and this started with like the whole TikTok thing and thinking about we need reform to the ADA. I made a video that was tagged to like Congress that 1,000 people left basically like 900 something comments on about how TikTok miraculously has helped neurodivergent people to have
Good
enough.
for you.
Yeah, thank you. They have enough of a buffer now to continue forward, and they don't have that from our government, and it's not ideal for a for-profit application to give that to us, but they're not going to do anything, so we have to figure out for ourselves. But that's inappropriate. We cannot be full members of society and citizens unless we are represented by those people as well, and they do not know how to do it. So we cannot have people at that level of government act as though we are disposable people that don't count, when, by the way, I was saying that in that introduction to it that my grandfather was on the Manhattan Project and made an atom bomb. Within the chat, another woman said, so was my grandfather, and we found out we're all neurodivergent. I'm like, oh, they probably knew each other. So how many of us built their fucking atom bomb?
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? And you're not going to understand the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the people that did that for you to then take ownership over the world and threaten people with it to the point that
we're freaking scientists.
We're scientists.
Right. And actually, parts of the American governments are trying to ban and get rid of TikTok because people are using it in a way that makes them aware of abuse, by the global hegemony of power. And so many people are radicalized against what's going on in Palestine through TikTok, right? The young people. And so they want to get rid of TikTok for that reason, even though it's being so helpful for us in so many ways.
There's too much public voice, right? That's
right,
what
and well, they can't control the flow of information anymore like they used to, right? On TikTok, they could show directly what's happening in Palestine and not be censored. In the same way that 4 or 5 years ago, we were able to show what was happening in all the Black Lives Matter protests without being censored.
Yeah. By the way, is it okay if my boyfriend listens in? He's also autistic. Yay!
Yeah.
But yeah, I also wanted to give him a bit of attention, and we're just on our way to get some boba tea. I hope it's okay if I log out.
Well, we'll go for. I usually go till 3. I usually go till 3. I was testing out going till 2, but I think I'm probably going to stick with going till 3 because this felt very successful anyways. So we'll go for another 15 minutes, just as like a sort of time check, and I'll try to stick to it too.
It's always okay to log out when you need to. You don't have to even announce it or let us know.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, and yeah, you can have other people listen in too. It's not a private conversation, right? It's being streamed.
I still like that it's nice and cozy like this.
I'm glad.
Not that streaming is not a good thing either. But wow, you're far in the west. It is 5:45 here.
Oh yeah, I'm almost in the bay. I'm almost in the water. I'm in San Francisco, so I'm like practically seaboard.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
My mom went to grad school in that area.
Oh, awesome.
UC Davis.
Yeah, totally. Yep, I've been there many times.
Cool. Yeah, I should tell her.
You should,
Anyway, I hope that this has really been awesome and refreshing to be a part of.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you were here. Likewise,
Yeah.
and yeah, this was a really important conversation. I'm really grateful for everything that you contributed to it.
Of course, and I tried to listen a bit because like I'm not here regularly. But I'm also really grateful that like I found a space that like wasn't just like all white female autistics. I'm just like, yes, there's a variety of people here.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I hope that you're all well, and I hope to see you again
circle. Bye. Yeah. Great to have you
Have an
in this
awesome
group.
one.
I like you'd love it.
I'm so happy too. I'm happy to like just be finding the same people across different servers. All right, have an awesome one. Bye.
Enjoy your boba.
Bye.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we went on a bunch of different threads, and I know we didn't really get to ADA. Like to talk about that.
This is we're in the ballpark though, because this is the kind of thing that needs to be ironed out before we fix the ADA. The ADA is not going to it's not going to be fixed by any representatives we have in Congress, and those that or any justices, and no, like they're not even, in my opinion, I don't even think they've approached sympathetic to what we're talking about. I think they're ready for a feel-good moment on their social media about us, and we're not ready for a fucking feel-good moment. This feels horrible. We're ready for a you have neglected us moment, and you don't know how to stop. So the attention that we're giving to these peripheral problems and framework, we're situating it. And I think this is incredibly valuable because they're not going to do that ever. That's on us to report back what's actually happening.
I actually think a good like intermediate point would be helping the people who are currently trying, like you and like these therapists, like even that one I mentioned, really tried but just failed miserably because she's at it alone. Versus like we had some great ideas here that I want to like consolidate. And like I'm even thinking for my UX research portfolio, maybe like doing some projects about, like, I really agree with what you said. For a lot of things, we're not, like, a lot of companies, they jump to implementation really fast. And so we end up with just a bunch of examples of what doesn't work, but not really a list of practices of what does. And so, like, I would love to, you know, spread this idea of playtesting you've been talking about, plus like some of the things that come up in conversation, like kind of let's start with crowdsourcing and then have people who already care playtest them, crowdsource that. And then I feel like legislators would be like the last step to do it right. Maybe there could be some intermediate, you know, like, okay, in the meantime, try and get them to ban ABA or stuff like that. But,
right.
Like,
and so, like, when it comes down to it, legislators, at least in the United States, are always the last people to get on board with, like, a social change movement of any kind. Right? Like, even liberal Obama took a very long time to get on board with gay marriage.
Yeah.
Right? Because the entire movement happened before it got to the level being changed in legislation. Right? Like there was an entire changing of public perception that had to happen socially first.
And I think the change of public perception will follow from this problem with the doing as willing, doing as arriving that I'm talking about. I will be working on one idea, and this might not work, but I'm pretty good at public speaking. and I've gotten that feedback that they label me and they put me in the Euro public speaker box. Great. Okay, good. So then what I need to do is have cueing in my language, like I was talking about, to make them think of building, to say to them, you're not going to, this isn't a discussion about where we belong in society. This is a discussion of what features we have. I'm going to make you practice doing as building thinking while you listen to me. I'm going to make you get that reward, because if I'm correct that this is a system of motivation, then I can get them to get those happy juices flowing, and they feel distinct, I am sure, even for them, from doing as arriving. Even if it's an already baked cake and they experience this motivation in a more continuous sense. For me, I know what it's like to build and to feel motivated. It's a phenomenally good feeling, and it's okay for me to have this instead of doing as arriving and get their motivation and get topped off by society, because what I have feels very good too. So I think I can get them to have that good feeling, and that's what I again, Mr. Rogers talks about that good feeling of self-control. Well, I want to have them have that good feeling of doing as building while they listen to us explain what we need, which is doing as building resources.
Right, and actually that just reminds me of the idea I'm currently working on, and ideally I'm going to turn into a book and then try to get out there as well, which is like the good feeling of taking responsibility for yourself and your thoughts, and like being in control of your life, which I didn't have for the past 30 years under like depression because of the way I viewed my situation. Like this reframing gives me a good feeling of I can get up and do things, and these things have a real opportunity to change and improve my life. I'm not actually fully stuck in a thing that can't be won.
Right.
So many good ideas here. Yeah, I want to go through my notes and compile therapy stuff that we covered, because I think we had some good ideas. I might just make like a Google Drive of the general things to potentially crowdsource related to both neurodiversity and community, and see
we
makes sense to work on.
We were talking earlier about how it could be really useful to have non-autistic people around for certain insights. I think it's also could be very useful for certain specific kinds of jobs, right? Because it would be so great if there was some actually organized thing done with all of these stream VODs that somehow explains what is in the different VODs and where these sections cut off and end and stuff like that. And I also know it's something my brain could not possibly do unless I made it my sole focus and special interest.
Right. We would need to, and this is the resource thing.
I actually did that sometimes when I was back where my only lifeline was the Twitch politics space. Right. It was the only thing motivating me was I was like, oh, these people are trying to help people. Maybe if I fix them, then that could affect the world, right? I've since learned, no, they're not actually doing that. But,
this is why I think one thing that would help immediately, and this maybe I need to so I have a client who's working for Anthropic, and I don't want to put this on this client or this thing, but I stretch people. It's not that fancy. I have to call them clients. But
is that what the AI?
Yeah, it's the more ethical AI branch of people that left ChatGPT. Okay,
Awesome.
But maybe I need to talk to them and be like, can you give us a bespoke AI to help us to organize our content around this? Because this is a social movement that you need to be interested in, because AI also thinks more like us. And this is a tool then for us to interface directly with instead of the outside world. It can help us to create better iterations on our ideas faster and work on them, because this thing is constantly looking at its own training materials to look for patterns. That's what we need. We need to be able to look for patterns faster because then we have to advocate for a system that can fit with the current one but meet our needs. And that's what we need to tell people we need and explain to them as quickly as possible why we need it. We are this kind of thing. We don't need it because we lack belonging. We need it because we cannot plug into the outlets that you've built. We are the wrong kind of core. What do you call that? We're the wrong thing. We have the wrong prongs. We don't fit. So we don't. It's not that we don't fit in. That's the problem. We don't function. That's the problem.
Okay. So I am supposed to interrupt two people, and I feel like you would really enjoy the conversation as well. One is Steve Hahn, who was in my Slack group. Y'all. I think I mentioned him before. Just generally building stuff for neurodivergent people. I'm not sure what he's done with AI. And then there's also, I don't know if you've run into Sam Keating from that group at all. But yeah, he's thinking about using AI to like organize information, basically, like transcribe and organize nonlinear thought for individuals and community. Like he's been exploring that a lot. And yeah, happy to like try and get a group together, or I don't know. That's or do you really feel like the AI itself?
I think
that it's something needs to happen at the anthropic level.
So I think. Wait, the last part of the question. Could you repeat that? It cut out just a tiny bit.
So, do you feel like again, I don't expect you to have this knowledge as like a non-technical person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you need support from Anthropic, or do you feel like someone building something with Anthropic or ChatGPT's product could serve the purpose? Because I know people are trying to do that.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that my concern is like I do believe like the level of bespoke that I'm talking about would mean probably needing to request things that don't exist. So that's my concern. Is like, for example, the memory is not set up properly on any of them for what I want to do. So you would need to have much more long-term storage of memory of specific concepts, and then it would have to be individualized to the user. So you would have to have a level of continuity that they do not have natively. And I don't know if people can make it do that. I looked into that myself, and I mean it's moving very quickly, so maybe this has changed. But my concern is that there's design choices that work for the general population that we would actually need the antithesis of. And the main thing is like the memory has to work very differently and almost like continuously self-referencing and without hallucinating.
That also immediately reminds me of like the big change in GPT 3 and 4, where all of a sudden like Jane, you and I found it a lot less useful because it was starting to produce answers in a lot more like list form, sort of like more like an article that you would look up rather than a human answer.
Right, and we may need to do things that are also weird, like we need maybe 3-dimensional representations of information. We may need image-based information. We may need it, like I made like my visual calendar on The Sims. We may need to do things like that where it's like, can you represent my day, showing me the rooms that I'm going to be in and which object I should interact. So really somewhat revolutionary ideas, and I don't believe that that's possible without a wing of AI developers themselves taking interest in it instead of using these things as they've given to the public. We need something, in my opinion, that is much more I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. Much more exploratory, right? Like we have to noodle with this and have a lot more freedom to do that. So we need somebody that like has a lot of power and access to resources.
Right. And the system that we exist within gives only a tiny subset of people the ability to be exploratory on this kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
We can't MacGyver it,
is what I'm saying. The path that I could see to get there Now, maybe, you know, have the ability to bypass all this. Like, if, you know, I was asked to take this on, I would start with people who are more accessible, who are building on top of it, and, like, you know, see what they've already play tested, and, like, kind of crowdsource what gaps remain and come up with a wish list or you know,
Yeah.
anthropic types.
Right.
Have it be coming not just from you, but from 10 different people trying to build things for autistic or neurodivergent.
I agree with this, and having people that are very like technically developed and skilled in this specific area, that also can say, well, here's the workaround that we put to mock up what this could be like, even though this is a shitty version of it, because there's other tools that we could, like, you know, third party sort of like try to interface with, and things that will just basically, again, like scotch tape them into place, be like, well, imagine this but different. That would be great, because I think that requires somebody that has the technical knowledge to set up that, and then know this is where the gap is, and this is why we have to do this workaround, and this is what it should like if it wasn't a workaround.
Yeah, exactly. Like, show what we can do with what's there, or like, if that would take a lot of effort, at least like talk to people who messed around enough that they have a really good argument for like why it can't be done with what's already out there, and how much would be able to be done if they did the thing. Because one risk, if we like came up with it ourselves, and like, you know, even though I've worked on AI projects, I haven't like explored this specific problem and the specific types of AI that are solving it enough to have a good sense of, if you solve this, I'll be able to do all this, rather than, well, thanks for that, now I need these more things.
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna give some thought to this too, and I think one of the main things that AI could do for us is also stay situated in this doing, is building language and metaphor. So that's what I had to train my ChatGPT to avoid as much as possible, was doing as arriving metaphors. And I kept correcting it and changing the memory, and now it's pretty good. And it's much better to interface with and much easier to work on problems with. So something like that is pretty straightforward, but I need to do some unpacking of that, and then see who do we talk to. And then and my role in life, I think, is probably like, I'm probably like a spokesperson. If anything, I'm probably a spokesperson, and I organize ideas on the back end to help, but I don't have these skill sets. So I only know it's possible because I'm using the tools as they currently exist and trying to ram this idea into it, and it does sort of work.
Challenge that, in addition to being a great spokesperson, like another time you'd use the term lead investigator. Yeah, and I think you're really great at that. Like, you know, consolidated the research that's out there, then you came up with a theory, and then you had people playtest and add to that. Like, in the field of UX research, that's like revolutionary. Like, you have that skill, and if you keep at it for a couple years, which I definitely think you will, like, you know, there's no reason if you like want, you know, you don't have to be like, okay, someone else do that. Like, you're doing really great.
Thank you. That's helpful feedback, because it's been 5 years since I got diagnosed, so it's sometimes helpful to be like, okay, this is what's currently happening, and I greatly value getting to check how confident I should be in the things I'm doing. So that gives me insight. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Like, I've seen some, you know, very well-reputed research projects in the community space, and when I think of like, what else have I seen that's like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, Jane's Discord.
Oh wow, yay! Thank you. Oh yay. Okay, that's so good. Woo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the doing as arriving people are finally coming around to the idea that we need to know what we're building before putting it out there,
Yeah.
and that maybe the same thing isn't going to work for everyone, and like,
Right.
having people build their own versions of the thing and play test it that way, that's like a 2024 idea as far as I know.
Right.
I
Right.
wasn't hearing about it in 2023. I was
Mhm.
barely hearing should, bring multiple people into the room when we're designing a thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really exciting. Okay. All right. I'll finish one closing thought on that,
Anyway,
and then we'll end the stream because my not autistic husband, who knows what time is, was like tapping his wrist like, hey, so I can go eat and stuff.
aw.
So the thing that I believe, and I learned this from dance as well, you really want the people that have the hardest time learning under your current system to be there, because they will teach you about the most exaggerated version of your weaknesses. They are the people that if you can teach them, you have fixed the holes in your methodology. If you can improve what's happening for them, everyone else's performance will improve because you have gone to the fundamentals at a level that is structural, and then anything you build from there agrees with reality. Because when somebody has especially something like a neurodevelopmental deficit, that is a material reality that you need to know is there in order to build something that respects material reality. You can say that they can just not do it, but then you need to defend why. You need to be smart enough about what you have produced, what you have made, to explain why that disabled person can't do it. And if you are wrong, you know very little about your subject. In fact, you don't even know where the holes are. So that's the problem. These systems get passed down through monkey see, monkey do, and forms of like telephone games, and we don't know what was the garbage, what was the garble, and what was the substance. So you're testing the substance when you have people with a disability there. Why is it working? And you need to know that these are the most valuable people, so they need to be there, or else you will be trapped in your own mythology and not know what's real and what was your own hype and propaganda.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm seeing so many things we can do that here. Like, I'm like, and like we can get, we can play test people's products in this group. And like you could even monetize that chat GPT that you've trained to do as building.
Yeah.
Like,
it's really good.
Pay just to be able to, yeah. I don't know how to do that. Like if it's possible to like yeah, share, because I know you've like trained it over time and it's not like just like you probably haven't saved all of the prompts.
Right.
But I mean, if you could even like copy some of the main ones and then I could put them into my chat GPT, like I'd pay for that.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to pass it on because it would be interesting. Like, more people need to test it because then again it's a positive dynamic where you learn more about what the material reality of the brain is, and then the brain learns more about what the material reality of the world is. And that's where we need to be, is there. And you and I, all of us, the support, all of us who are listening that have this are actually extremely lucky, because the kind of information that we work with is the kind that the rest of society clearly doesn't know how to talk about, deal with, see, perceive. We can hear it. So we need to explain to them, we're not just out here hallucinating. These are real things that you're missing. And by missing them, not only do you not know what the big picture is, you don't know how to prioritize anything. You've decided this is unimportant because you're unable to see it easily. That's not how importance works in material reality.
Right, absolutely. And then is that a good wrapping up point?
Yeah,
for this
that's
stream?
a good wrapping up point. Thank you for viewers. Yeah. Next week, if the U.S. government under our supreme leader allows us to, we will also try streaming this on TikTok. You know, I hear something weird. Instagram, I think, mildly censored something by accident or on purpose, but I started singing a stupid song. It goes like this: hot dog, North Korea. Hot dog, North Korea. Hot dog, North Korea. We live there. Anyways, and then Instagram censored that, but that's what I'm calling us for now. I hope that's not offensive to North Korea, but it might be. But hot dog, North Korea, everyone. Good luck. We'll see what happens.
All right.
But maybe TikTok next week. All right, bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye, Twitch.